All right. Well, we'll go ahead and start a little bit early here. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this next session has to deal with the future of PACE, the number of interesting new sectors being worked on, the number of new industries being related or integrated into PACE, as well as the number of and the different types of tools being provided to clients. So with that, our first speaker on this session is going to be Byron DeLear, coming to us from St. Louis and sustainable equity. And Byron's going to talk to us about some of the stuff that he's working on. So Byron, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up, Josh. Okay, excellent, excellent.
Sounds
so
great.
Wonderful presentations today, and sorry I couldn't join you in person. Many thanks to Missouri Energy Initiative for producing this PACE Summit and Show Me PACE. And I'm going to spare you all a death by PowerPoint factor and just share with you our story and background in PACE and provide some insights into creative uses for this public policy. I've been working in the PACE field for about 14 years, and we helped get the legislation passed. We're instrumental in building a coalition composed of bankers and individual realtors and the green energy organizations, environmental groups. And we passed the legislation in 2010. And it's just really great to see the progress that has made in Missouri. So PACE is a real innovation. And I just kind of conceptually want to talk a little bit about how it's an innovation. And I think that we all can agree that there's technological innovation that happens, and certainly with all the different iPhones and incarnations of technology that we see that progresses day by day. Well, PACE is a financial innovation that really facilitates the deployment of new energy technologies because it's a way to deploy the capital necessary so that these technologies can get deployed. And I just want to emphasize something that Josh mentioned earlier about being a problem solver. And I feel like all of our roles in the PACE industry, in many instances, is revolving around creative problem solving. There's a thing called a dog robber. This was a term used in the military, and that referred to an individual who could succeed at completing many different numerous tasks and be a diverse problem solver. And I really think that this is the skill set necessary to complete real estate transactions, financing transactions in general, but more specifically because PACE is a little more complicated than bilateral lending relationships between a property owner and a financial institution. In other words, you have the public has a seat at the table with the PACE district, and PACE is really a public-private partnership. And you've heard about some of the basics concerning PACE, how there's a property assessment, a special assessment that's placed on property, and then the property owner pays back the financing instead of making payments to a bank or another funding source. They're making payments through their property taxes, and then the county collectors will then distribute those payments then to the capital providers. So because of that complexity, there needs to be a little bit more patience on the part of participants, but it's our duty as PACE practitioners to really make the process as seamless as possible for those property owners, because it can be very complicated to hear about how the PACE financing works for the first time. So one of the problems that PACE solves for property owners that I think is very noteworthy is that it can preserve equity or ownership in new ventures. For example, our firm, Sustainable Equity, we're working on a large 8-figure project in Florida right now. And this project is a new venture. It has about a $70 million construction build. And normally for a new venture, you will take venture capital investing and other types of financing. So PACE can step in actually and be less costly to the owners of the business, provided that the PACE project can be approved. And so that's a real innovation that helps property owners. And again, because the capital is going towards these eligible improvements that are identified in the PACE statute, when you can operate within those boundaries, then that actually acts as a very significant service for owners of new ventures. Another problem that PACE solves, I think that's noteworthy, that I'd like to highlight, is that it helps with cash flow issues for businesses. And one project that we did early on in the city of St. Louis, the Missouri Athletic Club, was a project that was completed in 2015. This was a $2.5 million energy efficiency retrofit. And because payments can be spread over 20 years in Missouri, that's the limitation on the PACE assessment, that makes your annual payments so small that you can reach a positive cash flow with year one because your savings and other economic benefits exceed that small payment. Typically, commercial paper or commercial lending will be much shorter in term length, like 5-year or 7-year term length. And so because PACE is able to go out to 20 years, this helps with cash flow issues and really becomes a balance sheet equation for property owners to consider participating in the program or not. So our firm, Sustainable Equity, was formed last year. And as I mentioned earlier, I helped get the PACE program established in Missouri with a great team of folks. And actually, the other person that I'm sharing this panel with, Kathy Evans, I work closely with Kathy. We both worked for a company called Y-Green. Y-Green had acquired my company, Energy Equity Funding, in 2017. And I was folded over into the new entity as an executive. At Y-Green, we were in 3 different states, and we were doing commercial PACE financing as well as residential PACE financing. And we completed about 130,000 projects for $3 billion in funding. But what I'd like to talk about now is the future of PACE and finding creative ways to use this tool. So I think it's important to note that PACE is a creature of the state's laws that pass each PACE program in each state. So as capital providers and as project developers, we have to really attend to the individual laws that are in each state. Now, there's been some harmony and some consistency between these laws. Like, for example, energy efficiency and renewable energy measures are all applicable for PACE financing. But there are some other measures that are available in some regions that aren't available in others. Like, for example, disaster resiliency measures, like impact-resistant doors and windows. That's available in Florida, for example. Or to give you an example of another eligible measure that's not available in Missouri, in California, you have seismic hardening. In other words, measures that help protect a building against earthquakes. One measure that we could add in Missouri through an amendment that would be a real no-brainer is water conservation. So that would be a good measure to add that would really add to the public benefits of PACE financing. Another measure that I found interesting that's available in several programs, Illinois and I believe Michigan, is lead pipe mitigation. So PACE financing can be utilized to mitigate lead piping in a building. And so there's very creative ways to use this policy. And I know that for the folks that are attending this meeting, I'm sure that some of you are involved in some of the political processes in Jefferson City, but adding a few different measures to the PACE statute may be warranted. So one of the things that Josh had mentioned earlier also is PACE working with HUD, Housing and Urban Development Financing. So as Josh mentioned, it is available in Texas, and there is a project underway to perhaps get the Missouri AG to opine on PACE. And this is a requirement that HUD is requesting to be able to collaborate with PACE financing in the capital stacks of projects. So that's an innovation that's underway for our state. Also, PACE can work with USDA guarantee programs. So there's a project that we're working on that has a large USDA guarantee as part of a senior lending product that we're also going to put PACE on. So a USDA guarantee works like this. If you qualify under the USDA, and you have to typically do a very robust feasibility study to set up those qualifications. But if you qualify under a USDA guarantee program for an FDIC regulated institution like a bank, they can loan, say, $50 million to a project, and 90% of the risk is taken off of that balance sheet. So that really facilitates the injection of private capital into these programs, into these projects rather. And so PACE can work alongside the USDA guarantee programs, and we're seeing this as a real growth track right now in the country. I'm sure that there are a number of USDA projects that were mentioned earlier up in the state of Wisconsin. So a couple of the other innovations that are happening with CPACE is seeing how that PACE can be used in economic development projects, real estate development projects, in combination with e-storage, battery storage, and e-charging infrastructure. So we've got a number of projects that we're working on that include solar panels and battery storage and DC fast charging stations for gas stations. So this is another way that PACE can be used to facilitate really the need to develop clean energy infrastructure through our country. In fact, another vertical that sustainable equity is involved in right now that we're seeing great traction is we're building a 1.2 gigawatt solar manufacturing facility in Southern Illinois, partnering with a budding clean energy conglomerate called Navitas Solar. And so Navitas Solar is an Indian clean energy company. They're a solar module manufacturer, and they'll be operating the plant. And one of the unique attributes of this project is that this will be the first majority Black-owned solar module manufacturing facility in North America. And that really starts to talk about the overlap between sustainability and issues of equity. It's kind of really obviously embedded in our name. We like to develop that terrain between issues of equity and serving underserved communities, and then also how that dovetails with sustainability. So that's my presentation for today. You know, I'm happy to speak to you all, and look forward to hearing Kathy's remarks, and would also like to field any questions that you all might have. Thank you.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for Byron? No, I don't see any online. Thank you so much, Byron. And now we're going to pass it to Kathy. Just press next slide.
Hey, Byron.
Hey, Kathy.
So good seeing you. Miss seeing you in
Likewise.
person today, though. I'm going to try to move this.
Next slide.
Okay. So a new frontier in CPACE. For PACE equity, it's Cirrus low carbon. Next slide. It's the next generation of PACE, and it's exclusively by PACE equity. And it's just CPACE financing basically on steroids. That screen doesn't. There we go. Okay. And next screen. So what is Cirrus low carbon? So it was designed by the Pace Equity team and the New Building Institute. So number one, it's a design specification for energy efficiency. It's actually, that document is about 6 to 8 pages long, and it's got all specific energy efficiency requirements. And by opting into the Cirrus low carbon option, we're going to reward the developer with lower rates. And then the other thing that you get a certificate, you get the marketing promotion package, and that nice plaque is shown right there. Next screen. So the green building option, it's you win, your tenants win, the planet wins. We're all trying to do our part to reduce our carbon footprint. So you're going to get the lower rate with Pace Equity financing. You're going to get the green building designation, and that's the Cirrus low carbon. Next screen. So if you're thinking about LEED, I mean, LEED is wonderful. With Cirrus, you're going to get the significant rate reduction. You're going to get verified early. So with LEED, it's in the end. With Cirrus, everything is done up front. So you can market the property in the beginning as low carbon. There's no cost at all for the application or the verifications. Next screen. And we did win an award for this by the CPACE Alliance. It's Innovation and Efficient Financing Award. So Pace Equity introduced Cirrus Low Carbon program. It's about a little over a year ago. And it creatively addresses the goals in the PACE industry. So next screen. So this is the Cirrus low carbon design specification. This is on new construction. So if you're going to be building, there's some mandatory requirements. If it's new construction, all on the left side are going to be required. And we're looking at ASHRAE 90.1. We're requiring the HVAC on these projects to meet 2019 requirements. And we have the rest of the improvements are typically about a 2016 baseline. So what we're looking for is building envelope improvement, HVAC improvement, efficient water heating equipment and plumbing fixtures, efficient interior lighting and controls, efficient exterior lighting and controls. We want Energy Star appliances and solar readiness. So we're not saying you have to put on solar, but we do want solar readiness. Then in addition to those mandatory items, we need 2 additional that are required. So you can use any of these 2 on this list. High performance envelope, high performance fenestration, reduced window to wall ratio, reduced thermal bridging, air barrier continuity, high performance HVAC, high performance hot water heating, enhanced interior lighting controls, advanced metering, and energy monitoring. So on the flip side, can you move the screen? For redevelopment and major renovation projects, we've got it down to 2 are required. So you at least have to do 2. If you're doing all of these, then you have to meet the requirements for all. But if you're looking at just doing a major redevelopment, major renovation, at least 2 of these items have to be included. And then on the right-hand side, just 1 is required. So if you notice on the left-hand side, solar readiness has been moved over to the right side. So just 1 is required when you're dealing with a redevelopment project or renovation project. And I do want to say that on the historical properties, we were talking about like the windows, curtain walls, things like that. It's going to be hard to meet some of these requirements. We do give some leeway with that because we know what you're dealing with. So as long as they are historical buildings, then we do give some leeway on that. And next slide. So our PACE Equity engineering team does all the engineering and the estimating so that we give you a chance to make an informed decision. So if you look at step number 1, we're going to take a look and we're going to analyze it. So once you have opted in and signed a binding commitment with us, we're going to have our engineering team analyze your architectural drawings. We may be looking at spec sheets. We're going to be taking a look at your building plans. We're going to compare the building design, and then we're going to give you an estimate. So we're going to take a look and see exactly how much is going to be needed to get you to the Cirrus level. We'll give you a business case. We'll outline it and give you a business case with costs and benefits. Then we're going to require you to update the building design. The project will close, and after it closes, we'll do the verifications. Typically, this takes about 2 to 4 weeks. And once it closes, the verifications for the Cirrus low carbon, because we do work with the New Building Institute, that can take up to 4 weeks also. Next slide. So this is a sample. This is what you would actually see once you meet with our energy design team. They're going to come back, they're going to take a look at everything, and they're going to say, okay, this is what meets PACE, this is what meets Cirrus, and this is what you need to do to bump it up to meet Cirrus. So in this case, this was actually from a project, and the only thing that they had to really do was increase the lighting requirements, which I believe this was just automation at this level. Everything else had passed. So it's kind of depending on what building code, what IECC code you're in, that's going to get you like an easier path to Cirrus. So for instance, like Kansas City has already opted into 2021, and I believe they've got to start in September once they go to permitting, and that's going to be just a shoe-in for Cirrus. Next slide. And you can see, so this is the commercial code. And you'll see Missouri is white. That's because we don't have a state code. We're all over the place. Depending on municipality or the county, it could be pretty old. I think I've seen as old as 2005. And I think Kansas City may be the first one to go into 2021. I believe St. Louis, the city, and Columbia and Springfield are all 2018. So the closer you get to the 2021, the easier it's going to be to achieve Cirrus. And next slide. So we always say it's better to start early. So if you're in the design phase, it makes it a lot easier. We can have our design team come right in and work with the architects in the design phase of it. So pre-design, schematics, design documents, construction documents, we can do it all here, but it's a lot easier if we come in the beginning. Once it's already, designed, then we're kind of coming back saying, hey, can you make these changes? So, and if it's a retroactive type piece situation, it's usually too late to achieve Cirrus. Next slide. So this is what a lot of the results we found. So a lot of the additional cost to the budgets have been maybe just a 0.4 uptick in their overall cost, but the overall benefit is 8 times the investment. So the savings are great. I mean, it's millions. Next slide. And I've got some of these out of order. So this is one I don't think I had in here. These are all actual case studies that we did with Cirrus. Here we go. So this was new construction. All they had to do on this one, there were 5 design changes required. So this was a beautiful project. The additional cost were only $61,000, and if you look at the overall savings, the net financial impact is over $700,000 on this project. And that's with the reduced interest paid over 10 years, we calculated to $619,000. The impact to the property value, $91,000, because it improves your NOI. And the energy savings over 10 years, $59,000. It's a fantastic project. Next screen. Okay, so this was my project. So I was real proud of this one. This is the one I brought to Pace Equity, and this is what actually kind of reeled me in. Cirrus is amazing. So when this project came in, we were just trying to get over the finish line. Didn't even talk about Cirrus, anything. And during the energy engineering meeting with the sponsors, the engineer had made a comment and threw out the word Cirrus. And so I'm getting texts. This was all done, via Zoom. So I'm getting texts from my sponsor saying, "What is that?" And so I said, "Well, I don't know if there's time to actually get you on board with Cirrus. I wasn't going to mention it, but." So when they found out about it, they wanted, because what it did is it reduced this rate great enough to make it worth the additional. So what they had to do, and this one, it wasn't much. This is a new construction facility of self-storage, and they had to darken the windows. So they, and there wasn't much in glass in this building. And then they had to increase the rooftop units to a 15 IEER. And then they just had to prove with the thermal barrier that's got to be verified. And that was about maybe $25,000 that they had to do in additional improvements, but it was well worth it. So they jumped all over it. Their energy savings alone. And then they had to do some more automation. I think they had to do, they've got some warehouse units, and they just wanted it so that with the automation, that if there was anyone in there, if there was no movement, the lights would go off. So they were super thrilled about this product. So from there, I'm just on board. I think it's the greatest thing out there. To me, if you're not taking advantage of it, you're throwing money away. It's a win-win-win. You're improving the building, you're improving it for the tenants. If you're a hotel, then you're just saving money all around. If you're multifamily, you're making it worth more. The tenants love the fact that they're going to have a lower energy bill. It's just all over win-win-win. Next slide. I have some others in here. These are all just case studies. I had so many in here. I didn't want to make this too long, so I cut some of them out, and I don't know which ones I cut out. Oh boy, here we go. So this one was multifamily new construction. Now this one, they had 7 design changes. It's a large project though. It's $10 million. And the additional improvements that they needed to do was $230,000. So, and the overall saving on this one, you can see the impact is $654,000. Next slide. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Byron and Kathy. Are there any questions for Kathy? Or Byron? Kathy, I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when we look at what Cirrus is doing, and you mentioned Kansas City specifically, and those other areas that you're working, right? You have an SIR, right? So if you have to beat a building code of 2021, and it makes sense that the interest rate reduction is good, but where does the savings come from for these properties if all you're doing is meeting the building code? And then how does PACE work in those communities where the building code's high and they have the SIR? Have you seen that? And we didn't get to go through your other examples, but I'm pretty sure they do have an SIR in some fashion in those other states, California, Ohio.
To be honest, Josh, we have not funded a Cirrus project in Kansas City to this new code. I mean, it's brand new, so we haven't come across this yet.
So is it I'm sorry, are they the first ones in the country to go to 2021? Or when you did Ohio's and California's, they're built, because California has a pretty.
That I'm aware of it, because I went into a meeting at a Kansas City EDC, and it was actually a developer that had brought it up to me and said, "Are you aware of this?" And I said, "Well, maybe we have something that can take this thing out." And that's that we could offer a lower rate on the PACE side of it. But I haven't had one yet to do the energy analysis yet. That may be a great discussion with you.
Yeah,
offline.
Obviously, and to everyone, I mean, this is part of the things that we have to deal with on a regular basis is Jacob had mentioned it, that the local governments can be fickle and change, and that includes with policies and regulations. So, and we're going to hear about that later, which doesn't mean St. Louis is being fickle. It's just that that's their policy, and you have to figure out how to work with it. So whether it's this or lenders wanting interest only, Cap I, or you want to fund cannabis, these are things that we will continue to evolve with. We are very lucky in Missouri. Our statute is broad, which means that we have the ability to be flexible with what we're providing. So I didn't know if you guys had thought about it yet. I could see Cirrus being a product that works well where you have a high building code requirement for those new builds. But if you don't, but it all depends on that SIR and how you get that calculation to run. So,
Well, if you're dealing with the 2018, well, I think, I can't remember if it's a 2015 or 2018. It was the St. Peter, the storage facility. It wasn't much that they had to do.
and that was in St. Louis.
That was in St. Louis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they're not giving any leeway, they have to go to ASHRAE, the 90.1. So that's 2019. So that's where they had to really take it up a notch and go to a 15 IEER.
Makes sense. All right. All right. Well, if there are no questions, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then come back with our last session with Katarina and Stephen to talk about how it kind of what we were just talking about here, how building codes or how PACE can help you meet the building code requirements. So we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you, Byron, for joining us. Thank you, Kathy.